I was always searching for the highest quality in cannabis. Well, it turned out, if you want something done right, you're just gonna have to do it yourself.
For the record, I'm done trying to make y'all comfortable. For the record, you ain't trying to grow, then it's done for you. For the record, lab on me going all the way. For the record, ain't trying to link, no time to waste. For the record, been a little too nice to y'all.
Welcome back to VaderVision. It is time to fire up our PC Micro Grow, aka the TIE Fighter. Now, this is just a fun experimental project, and a lot of this is going to be very prototype. So bear with me on this project. I know some of you were wondering, what's the point of running a small micro grow? Well, there's lots of experiments we can do, and we can work on a smaller scale, allowing us to test out new techniques and products without making such an impact on our budget. So of course, this style of a project is not for everyone, but hopefully it can inspire some of you to think outside the box and do something a little bit outside of your comfort zone and not just follow exactly what all of us are doing, say, here on YouTube. Okay, well, that being said, we are going to focus back in on upgrading our TIE Fighter. Now, I am installing a fan that does not have LED lights in the back. That one computer fan had LED lights in it, and when we go to flip the flower, I don't want the LED light to affect it at all. So both fans now do not have lights in them, and they can just run full 24/7 without any issues. Now that we have the fan mounted, I'm just going to go ahead and splice into this one as well. I'm going to open up the wires, get them all connected up and tucked into the back side of this case. Just going to plug them into the power supply, and they're all ready to go. Then I can get the back of the case reset on top of it, and we'll be all done with that, nice and neat, tucked away. Get the case back inside of the closet where it will be living. I'll go ahead and plug in the fans and the power supply, make sure that they are running and working and pushing the right direction. Looks like we got everything wired correctly and mounted in the correct direction. So this back fan can push air out, and this front fan is pushing air in. Get a nice little flow going inside of this case. And as you can see, this back fan no longer has an LED light in it. Now I went ahead and hunted around and found some different containers to try out and prototype as water reservoirs. We're going to use this low profile one for inside the case, and we're going to set it up with an air stone, even though we're going to have water flowing through it, kind of like an undercurrent, where we'll be pumping water from a lower reservoir into the top container. We will still have enough sitting water with air stones just in case the pump were to go out. The plants will still be sitting in water with plenty of oxygen. A bit of redundancy for the system. Now I'm just drilling some holes gently into the container, setting up the air stones first, and then we're just going to use some bulk fittings that we use for flood and drain as our connectors for our hoses that will run to our pump and our drain. Making it nice and simple. Here I'm just using a 1 3/8 spade bit, and then I'm just going to clean up the edges of the plastic, and hopefully we'll have a nice snug fit. Looks good, no problem. Make sure that it's low enough so that the lid will go on it. I actually had to do this twice, which is why I bought plenty of extra containers. They were cheap, not a problem. So that way if I did it too high or too low, I can make adjustments with other containers. So I realized this fan in the front was too low. Now I need to mount it up a little bit higher. That way the drain line hose can go right out the front of the case and down into the bottom of the rack where the lower reservoir will be. Get it plugged back in and all screwed up. Get a fitting in, and it looks good. Now we'll have just enough room to get that hose through. Okay, well, now that the top container is set, we're going to move on to the bottom reservoir container that we will have underneath the PC. We will be pumping water from the bottom reservoir up to the top container, and then it will flow back down naturally, much like the flood and drain, except it'll be running 24/7. I did get the smallest pump that they make, and it should work just perfectly for this. We just need a little bit of flow moving water through the system. Get a general pilot hole in for the hose, and I'm just going to cut out a little notch here at the top so that way the wire can come right through the side and we can snap the lid on, no problem. Moving on to test the system, just going to fill up the containers with a little bit of reverse osmosis water, fire on the pump and get everything flowing. Now I put a smaller drain line in on the side and it does work well enough to run the system, but as you can hear there's a little bit of a weird squeaking and the water line gets up pretty high. So I went ahead and installed a larger system, the same exact hose fittings we use for the flood and drain, and it has a much better flow. Also, you can see I did break this particular prototype container reservoir on the bottom. It's a little rough with drilling those holes in, so gonna have to redo that. Now for that bottom container, I haven't tested it out just yet, but I did get this water cooler. So this will sit on the outside of the container and that probe sits on the inside and keeps the water nice and cool. Also got the controller for this unit. It was actually really cheap on Amazon. It was like $100, so this was not expensive versus like a $600 or $700 water cooler system. And since there was so little water, it was much more economical. I will need to use some silicone with it though, because it was leaking a little bit in my test run from setting it down. Now went ahead and got good holes set into a couple of containers, taped off the holes, and now I'm just going to spray paint everything black. I'm going to do it with a couple layers over a couple of days, let it dry, then put another layer on top of it, and that way we can block all the light since all these containers were pretty much clear. I did try and find solid colored ones, but I had no luck. But no problem, little paint does the job. Now that all the paint has dried, went ahead and reinstalled this water cooler unit, put some silicone around the seal, and got a little messy, so I'm just gonna clean it up, use a wet paper towel, wipe off the silicone, and we are ready to go. Our container for our plants is all ready. Just gonna install all the bulk fittings and the hoses for the air stones. Be nice and gentle, get a nice seal on all of these so we don't have any leaks. Pull the air stone hoses in, add a little water, and test out the system. Just gonna fill this up right to the edge, and we're gonna get water in the bottom reservoir as well. This whole system takes about 2.5 gallons, and it seems to be running great. You got the air stones going. Let this go for a little while, see if there are any leaks. And it turned out there was a little bit of a leak from the line coming in, so I just went ahead and put some silicone on there and fixed the problem. Running well. Now we've got our cooler in. This is the controller. I'm just gonna get it all plugged in, get it some power. It's got a thermometer probe in there, and checking out our water temperature right about 68 when it's running with the pump. So I'm just gonna turn this control unit down. They supply the world's smallest screwdriver, and you're supposed to just turn it until the little green light turns on and leave it right there. Let it run for a little bit, and brought our temperatures down more than a few degrees. So looking good, although really I could let the temperature run about 65, 68, and it wouldn't be an issue. So I don't have to run the cooler at this time. It is winter here and a little cooler in general. But it is good that we do have it if we need it. Now, I took some clones with my mom's and I took some extra Malibu pie, and I just let them run for a couple extra weeks in the aero cloner. As you can see, they got some nice long big roots. Go ahead and get that one back in there a little bit, be nice and gentle. They'll be fine. And I'm gonna run these in the system for a week as an experiment. I may still end up pulling these out after a week if everything's running well, and then resetting brand new cuts into this container and starting them in the LED grow all the way through to harvest. But if everything's going well, I might also just leave these cuttings in here, get them tied up, trained, and we'll flip to flower just with these little girls. So we'll see how it goes. But for right now, I'm just running it as an experiment, and we're just setting these right on top, nice and gentle. I'm gonna do a little bit of trimming, strip them down, and we are off to the races. We'll go ahead and get the display glass set on in. Very nice. So we got good airflow, everything's going. Water temperature is doing well, running in the system, it's down to 60. Last thing I'm gonna do is get these girls some nutrients. We're gonna continue running Canna for now. I might end up switching it, but I think for this grow, I'm just gonna stick with Canna in general, whether it's the Cocoa lineup or the Aqua lineup, like this system. I am familiar with the nutrients and they do buffer well with low amounts of pH fluctuation. And since we are running a different hydroponic system and some new lights, I'm gonna stick with something that I'm familiar with and then experiment beyond that in future grows. Well, thanks for joining me today as we get the TIE Fighter off on her maiden voyage, a bit of a test flight for this next week or so. We'll be back with a report on how everything goes, and I'll decide whether or not I'm going to flip over a couple of new cuts or if we're just going to run with what we got going. I'll be back with more updates soon enough. So until next time, I'm Vader, and I'll see you later.